Welcome to the Salty Sarge Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you subscribe to your favorite podcast. I am Hunter, aka Tech Guy. Joined today by the namesake himself, the Salty Sarge.
Hey everybody, how we doing today?
Woo, we're doing great. All right, so Salty, what is on your mind today?
Well, I'm just sitting back, just cruising around today. I worked today and was just thinking of some ideas. But I remember, I had a supervisor one time that told me that he did an evaluation on me. They do like yearly evaluations. And one thing that he remembered the most that was really unique about me and my position that I was in at the time was he goes, man, you can find a burglar anywhere, like in a snowstorm in the middle of the night. And so one night, there was a night where so when it snows, in Oklahoma, it snows a lot, and we're not like regular folks like up north that, the snow stays on the ground for, 6 months out of the year, because I talked to a guy the other day, but in Michigan, they said that they'll have snow from September, sometimes all the way until March or April.
Oh, wow.
So we don't have, those that when a snowstorm hits Oklahoma, if it's big enough, it'll shut down the city. But for the most part, we're told that you don't go driving around, looking for trouble. You just kind of park your car and kind of hang out. They'll tell you, hey, park your cars. So that night I had taken a call. It was a domestic deal. And I went, and to solve the issue, the lady goes, I just want to ride. I said, okay, I'll give you a ride. No big deal. So I'm driving slow, and I hit this one street. I'm coming down this one main road, and she lived at the bottom of this hill, and I was like, there's no way. She said, can you take me down there? I go, ma'am, I can't get out of there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm in a Crown Vic, okay? And I don't know, the old Crown Vics, they were just rear wheels.
Rear wheel drive.
Yeah, so they were fun to drive in the snow because you could like peel out, and spin, and it was fun, but they're old school and they're not very good for that kind of weather. And they bottom out a lot. So they're comfortable. They're big and comfortable, but that's about it. So I said, hey, ma'am, you're going to have to walk, down. Well, about that same time, we come pulling on the street, and I look at this business, and it was like an auto repair shop. And I see like a truck, like an SUV with headlights on. So I'm like, that's weird. Like, it's like 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, what is going on over there? They're not repairing cars. And they kind of pull around, and then the lady goes, yeah, they're up to no good. I bet they're up to no good, sir. You should go check it out. I'm like, gee whiz, yeah, I probably should. So I let her out. She goes, good luck, sir. Catch those bad guys. I was like, how do we know they're bad guys? She goes, oh, trust me, they're bad guys. I'm like, okay, lady, intuition, I guess. So I cruise over there, and I get up, and they're trying to leave, and I kind of circle back around, and I kind of block them a little bit, but not really blocking them in where we can't block anybody because you don't want them to ram your car. Yeah. So I kind of pulled up there, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And we just got these new little radio updates. So my handheld was kind of giving me problems. And when I say handheld, that's like a boom civilian world, like a walkie-talkie. Okay. That's what we call them, handhelds. Because you hold them in your hand. And that's what you take with you. That when you get out of the car, you turn your main radio off in the car, you turn it down. When you're in your car, you turn that up, and then you turn your handheld down because it kind of covers each other. Okay. So when you get out of the car, you turn your handheld up so you can talk on it, you can hear it and things like that. So I had a gun belt at the time. We didn't have the vest stuff that we wear now. So I had a gun belt with my radio on my side. I carried that for 14, 15 years. I mean, it's just what we did. So I come around, and I go to the driver immediately, and the driver, I said, what are y'all doing? He's like, oh, we own the business. And I'm like, and it was an S10 Chevy Blazer, an older model. So the back of it was open, and there's like these big old tires stuffed in there. And I'm thinking something just isn't right here. Well, the passenger, he can't get his door open, and he goes, yon, Billy. And he bails out, and he crawls out the window and takes off running. And he runs right down the middle of the street and just goes. So I'm like, oh. And so I go to this guy, and I handcuff him to the door. And I run after, I don't know what this guy's name was. We'll just call him Terry. It's Billy and Terry. And Terry just kept running. Like, and I'm not talking like, you ever see like on a football where like the band major is running and his legs are in the air. That's what this guy looked like. He looked like Ichabod, just like with his feet. He's just dancing, running down the street, and it's the middle of a blizzard. Like there's probably 6 inches of snow on the ground, so you can't see the road, and he's hauling. So I get on the radio, my radio starts messing up, and I'm like, and I throw it down. I'm ticked, and I get on the radio, and I think this was after a storm. Yeah, because our helicopter was up, because I picked up my handheld and I finally I got in my car. I got that guy in the car, got him in custody. He's the driver. You want him anyways.
Yeah, he's the one you
So I'm trying to figure out how they got in this building. I'm like looking around, I see footprints, and the helicopter's flying around. They can't find this guy. So my partners are coming to me, and they're driving super, super slow because they don't want to crash. And they're probably 5 or 6 miles from me. This dude, one of them is driving, and that same guy, Terry, runs in front of their police car. They almost hit him. And he stops, he gives this look like, and they go,
like deer in the headlights.
Hey, there's your guy. And I said, that's him. I go get him. And they go searching for him. He runs off again. He disappears. But hold on to that thought, because we'll tell you what happened to Terry down the road.
Oh, no.
So later down the road. So I get this guy, Billy, in custody, and I'm starting to look around the building, and I can't I just walk up to the overhead door, and you can see a piece of glass was broke out like this little bitty window. And I was like, that's weird. So then I just opened the door, and when I opened the door, it was like, there's the SUV with all on blocks. And there was a piece of the rim that matched the tires that were in his car. And he didn't want to talk to me about it. He's like, I don't know anything, man. I just thought I'd come here. Well, we trips on through this business. We're trying to find an owner, because without a victim, and that's another thing too, the public needs to understand, without a victim, you really don't have a crime.
Yeah.
So just because we catch somebody, if we can't get a hold of a victim, and we really don't have anything we can really hold them on, if no one wants to press charges, we can't hold you. So that's just something to think about whenever you have crimes committed against you. Press charges so we can do our job. That really helps us out.
Yeah.
So, and there's got to be a better way. It was the middle of the night. We get a hold of the business owner. He comes. That's his grandson's SUV sitting on blocks, and he's like, yeah, I want to press charges. Heck yeah, man. So I was like, great. So we end up hooking this guy up, and the supervisor was just like, man, like, how did you know to go get that guy? And I go, well, it just stuck out. It was just weird. I mean, it's just snowed a bunch, 2 or 3 in the morning, and my mindset was, as a night shifter, I did it for a long time, is anybody that's out after midnight in some areas are typically up to no good. So you're going to go jack them up, or not really what I mean by jack them up is you're going to go talk to them.
Yeah.
That's what we call them, jack them. It's like a slang term. So anyway, we get this guy, take him to jail. I arrest him for burglary, and it turns out great. And whenever later on, I ran into him again. And you always wonder where like these people go. Like you see all the people, we call them zombies, when they're walking around in the summertime. Yeah. There's people everywhere over there just walking around the streets at night, just walking. Yeah. And you don't know where they live. They're probably going to crack houses. They're not out for a jog. Okay. They're or a night stroll. They're just out up to no good. Yeah. Well, when winter comes, they all disappear. So you're like, where do they end up? So we hit this one house, we go to this one house on a call, and we open the door, and it's like Pandora's box of people, just like rando people. And there's a guy laying on this cot, and the house is really warm, and this older guy was taking care of him, all these different people that hang around the streets. And we'll call him Smoke. He went by Smoke. It was Smoke's house. And every room had, it was AKA crack house, if you will. But his name was Smoke. That's what everybody called him. I don't even know his real name. He was an older guy. He's probably dead now, but at the time he was older. And this guy's laying on the cot, and he goes, "You don't remember me?" And I said, "No." I said, "I don't." And he goes, "It's me, Billy." And I go, "Oh, yeah." And he go, "Whatever happened to that guy, Terry?" And he goes, "Well," he goes, "right after that, there was a business right next door to that business, a small little building. Well, it kept getting burglarized somehow. They would go in through this like smokestack chimney looking thing, and they crawl up into the ceiling. I think it was like an attorney's office or something, like a small attorney. I can't remember, insurance or something. And they would get to the ceiling, and they would break in and they would steal stuff in there. Well, one day a guy goes to work and he's just kind of doing his own thing. Well, we got a couple alarms there that night. We couldn't figure out. I mean, the doors were locked. We couldn't figure out how we're like, nobody can crawl in through that space. No way.
Yeah.
Boy, were we wrong. Terry can crawl in through those spaces. I don't know if he can like contort himself or what, but he was Houdini. Yeah. So he ended up getting up there. Well, the guy's like walking around making his coffee. Imagine you're at your shop and you're just like, dude, and you look up and there's legs hanging there and they're stiff as a board. And it looks like a hiker, like a hiker mannequin. That was Terry.
Oh, no.
Terry had wedged himself between the rafters and he suffocated and then passed away.
Oh, geez.
So basically his crimes caught up to him, if you will.
Yeah.
And he told me that story. And he goes, yeah, Terry was the guy who was hanging in the building. I went, I'll be darned, because I wasn't there. That was day shift.
Yeah.
So we didn't know about it. We just heard about the story. And actually, a fireman friend of mine responded to it. And he was telling me about it too over like a fireside chat deal. And it was just like, wow. I mean, what's going to happen next? So that was a fun little event that involved, a weather related that, you never know what you're going to find. I mean, you just never know when you come to work what is going to happen. I did not expect, a lot of times when I come into work, I don't ever expect to encounter the things that I do. Mm-hmm. You just don't, it's not predictable. To a point it is, but for the most part at that time, I didn't know what I was going to encounter. I mean, there were so many moments that, one night I was notorious for foot chases. Mm-hmm. So I didn't catch Terry because I didn't my radio and I wanted to catch the other guy. So normally I would have kept chasing him, but I learned don't go after the passenger. Just stay with the driver because that's who you have charges on. So one night I'm cruising around my normal area, my little stomping grounds that I just drove hundreds and hundreds of miles, dude. I put a lot of miles in my police car in this area. And the division commander would say, go to this area and just hunt and impact it all the time. So I just felt like that was permission for me and blessing for me to go out and do my job. So if anybody said, hey, you're doing too much over here, like you're encountering, like if you're jumping out on people, and what I mean by jump out, it's like a voluntary contact. Okay? Yeah. And what people need to understand about voluntary contact is when a police car pulls up to you and their lights aren't on, okay, because a traffic stop is not the same thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a little knowledge moment here, okay? Just a little, we'll call it a nuggets of knowledge.
Nuggets of knowledge.
So when moments, we need to have like a nuggets of knowledge.
It's a little drop.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
nuggets of knowledge.
Nuggets of knowledge, yeah. So the knowledge moment is anytime a police officer turns their lights on and pulls you over or is coming at you, you now are being technically kind of arrested. Your liberties are being taken away from you. You have to pull over, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time everybody does. So that's kind of where you have to think. Now, when you pull up to somebody and you don't have your lights on and you walk up to them and you say, hey, can I talk to you? And they say, sure, yeah, what's up, man? Or I ask a question, they answer.
You're not detained.
You're not detained, but you kind of are. Mm-hmm. You can't run from me because I'm talking to you. You're kind of like an investigative detention thing, maybe, or it's still voluntary contact. You could tell me to, piss off if you want to walk away. Mm-hmm. And people have done that. And I'm not one of these guys of contempt of cop, okay? I'm like, hey, you know what? You don't want to talk to me. But the fun part is we called it a certain term, like we called it an east side stop.
Yeah.
You would follow a car and they put on a driving school and then they pull themselves over. They just pull in a random driveway. Mm-hmm. And you're like, you pull up to them, you don't have your lights on, no emergency equipment is engaged. You get out and you're like, hey man, do you live here? Yeah, my cousin Bob lives here. Really? What's the address? And I live here. And then you say, hey, do you have a driver's license? No, I don't. I just saw you on the public road driving the entire time. Nobody else got in the car with you. So now you are detained. And then it leads into other things. So a little bit of nuggets knowledge there. So I go to this area and that day, second shift had got, and the thing you got to remember about third shift is we didn't take near the call volume than everybody else did. Okay. So I learned how to be, I feel like a real police officer because real police work to me, and I was telling a rookie this the other day, is not babysitting homeless people or responding to like calls were like, hey, I'm in a burglary report. That's not police work to me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Police work is where you're actually actively going out and suppressing an area and preventing crime or digging in and investigating crime. It's like cat and mouse. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I thrived on it. And my favorite thing was catching people in lies or their stories that I have information that they don't know.
They don't know that you know.
Yeah. So one of those situations that, there was a drive-by that happened that afternoon and they knew who the suspect was. They identified. So when you do a crime like that, you identify the suspect, you can do what's called a probable cause affidavit, and we issue what's called a radiogram. So it's basically a warrant that you write right there, and it's good for 72 hours, but it's on a probable cause affidavit. So if you come in contact with this person, mm-hmm. you can detain them and arrest them on this charge because we have enough evidence to prove that they did what they did based on victims, witnesses, everything, and they can identify that was that person.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. This guy did a drive-by on his girlfriend's house, and he kept coming at her. Well, I'm just kind of cruising around, not knowing that went down like that. Okay, mm-hmm. I didn't know this. I see this car, and there's a guy, he bails out, and he sees me, and they go, whoop, whoop, like, and that's the signal of the police.
Yeah, everybody hide your drugs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and he takes off running. So I start chasing him, and someone got on the radio and said, hey, that might be our ADW suspect, assault with deadly weapon, suspect that got in a shooting earlier. So I'm like, okay. So I chase him, and he runs to this house and hits these bushes and vanishes. His shoe falls off though. And I'm like, I'm not running through that. I'm not jumping these fences. So I run back, I hit the side street, I run down, and I cut across hoping that he's going to pop out on this other side. Right. Mm-hmm. And so he cuts across and he pops out like, I'm good. He ain't good. I smoke him right there. I get him on this car because this guy's like, he's right there. And he not really yelling at me, but he's like pointing. Not really. I can't describe. And this was before body cameras. So we had body cameras. So he doesn't want to give up his position of like he's helping the guy. So he's kind of like with his elbow. I explained it, but he doesn't want to be like a rat.
Yeah.
Because that guy was like looking at him like, you ratted on me, but I was like, I caught you anyways.
Yeah.
So I hook him up. Mind you, this kid's like 20 years old, mm-hmm. And at the time I'm probably in my 30s, maybe. Yeah, 30s. And so I get him and I take him to jail. I come back out on the street and I'm cruising over by these apartments. And as I come through, this person's at this car. Looks like he's braking this car. And he takes off running. My buddy's with me. Mm-hmm. And we chase him and he comes around. We split up. Comes around the corner and I just close. I'm like, boom, get that one. Someone gets on a radar and they're like, dude, you're like 2 for 2, bro. Uh-huh. I was like, yeah. And then so I go again. And the third one, he takes that one to jail. And it had a felony warrant. They were wanted by somebody. And it was a guy that had some warrants or something, had warrants and some drugs. And so then the next one, I go, where was I at on the next one? Oh, we were at a club. There was a club over there and they had like a shootout. And as I'm pulling up, the guy's running and he's running with a pistol and he throws the gun in this creek and I'm chasing him and we run for quite a ways. I mean, we're running for a while.
Yeah.
And I ended up catching him and I was 3 for 3 that night and people were just like, dude, like what is up? Like, and so people started kind of following me. Like officers would hang out with me more. And a lot of
they want to see your foot chase.
Yeah, I mean, they're just like, dude, like, how does it always fall in your lap? I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm just out here. I mean, I'm just here, I mean, I don't know.
Salty Sarge looking like Bobby Boucher out there.
Yeah, man, and I had a good time. I mean, it was fun. And oh man, in one night I ran into, there was 2 officers. They were a type of enforcement unit that goes after and targets specific groups of people that hang out together and commit crimes.
Yes.
If you kind of get my drift and in visualizing what that's called.
Rhymes with Jang.
Yeah. And they hang out together and they might bang a little. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's what we'll call them. That enforcement type of people unit, they travel in 2s and they have this traffic stop and I roll up to them and I know them and I say, hey, what's up guys? Like, hey man. And everything's fine. And they say, hey, we're good. They give thumbs up and I drive past them. And like 2 minutes later, they're in a pursuit with this car and they're like, hey, there was an officer with us just a minute ago. And I was like, that's me. It's time to go. And so I take off and I catch up to the pursuit and we're driving and it is a lot of fun. Okay. It is. My windows are down. My seatbelt's on. And I get to just drive. And I love to drive because I'm a driver instructor and I just love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you're just going and you're chasing this guy and it's nighttime. The nostalgia of it is just amazing. And there's a lot of people in this world that will never get to experience that. Yeah. And you talk about the coolest rush. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. And sometimes you have like an outer experience. You're like, I'm really doing this right now, you know? And then you think, okay, I really need to be safe about it. I don't want to hurt anybody, you know, but it was late at night and we're driving through.
But also I want to be Tom Cruise.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like Maverick there. Yeah. So we end up, they always go to this one spot. There's an open lot, has been for years. And it's kind of up on a hill. And at the bottom of it, there's some railroad tracks and there's a running track next to it, like a walking track. And they always ditch their cars right there. Every gang member I've ever chased over there, that's where they ditch them at every time. It got to be we would predict it and guys would go there preparing to see this happen. Because I've been in 3 separate pursuits where it ended right there in that lot. So the car ditches. Well, I'm probably at least a minute and a half behind these guys. Maybe I can see them, but they stop and he bails out and he runs straight for that opening, runs down the hill, and these guys are after him. And I'm just like, okay, here we go. And so I take off with them and they're probably a good football field and a half in front of me.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're going to get him. And here I'm coming. And I'm like full press, dude. I'm hauling some serious butt. And people call me White Cheetah. So I'm moving and I run past one cop and he's just like, yeah, get him. Yeah. And he kind of peels off a little bit. He's just like, you know, he's probably, and then I get to the next one. He's a little bit skinnier. And he's hoofing it, and, you know, and he's like, yeah. And he kind of slaps my hand. He's like, get him, man. And I run.
Gave you a high five.
Oh, yeah, dude. And he kind of slows down. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, fresh legs. I'm yelling, fresh legs. And as I'm running, the bad guy, that's his fatal flaw. You don't look behind him.
He looked back.
He looks back. He's like, oh, man, he's gaining on me. So he tries to dart down the hill. And that's whenever I just come in and I just like, come up behind him and just take him out. And he goes right to the ground and, you know, the fight is on. I mean, he rolls over and he's starting to fight us. And I get him and those guys are like, man, good job, dude. You're super fast. Awesome. Thank you so much, you know. And we get back to the car, there's a gun in the car. And that's why he was running, but because of that gun.
Yeah.
Duh. But that led to other things down the road. But that was a pretty fun foot chase, and it was hilarious because the fact that I ran past those guys and
they were like cheering you on. Like, he's got it.
I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I'm not at that time even. I wasn't one of these guys that, you know, runs every day. I mean, I hate running.
You're not doing the marathons.
But for some reason, I'm just built to where I can just bursts of run and energy, you know, because then, so then I always like to start off one night because it was always at night.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
On this subject.
Yeah.
So you said that this is the third one that had happened where it was that exact same place where they've dropped their cars and ditched it and ran.
Yeah.
Was that something that they were trained on, or is that just instinct of, hey, we got to get here and then bail? What do you think it is? They
were taught that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just all the particular groups of people that hung out together that rhymes with, what'd you say?
Well, I'm going to go with hang member.
Hang member.
Yeah.
Yeah. A hang member would hang out in a certain area together in groups of houses. And a lot of those houses were their great grandparents. And great grandparents, they came up from a generation that didn't do that kind of crap. Okay. But their grandkids did. And their great grandkids did.
Yeah.
So they would go back to Meemaw and Pops and like hang out at their houses. Well, Meemaw and Pop would kind of protect them, not knowing what they were up to.
They not knowing they were hanging.
This particular lot, that's just where they all went. And they knew they had kind of like a getaway plan because it went back down this hill across a creek bed and went up another side to another part of a neighborhood. And it was an apartment complex that was notorious for hang member, if you will. And they would run up there and hide. And a lot of times, I mean, some guys would just stop, you know, and I mean, whenever you want to catch them, and that was a really good crime that you need. I mean, when I was working in that specialized particular unit. My goal was to get guns off the street. And I'm not, okay, first off, I want to throw a disclaimer out there. I'm all about guns. I have lots of guns. And let me tell you something, my guns don't do anything, and they haven't committed any crimes today. But you put a gun in the wrong hands, it could be a potential problem, okay? And I've worked a mass amount of numbers of in shootings and drive-bys and stuff that I would respond to, and innocent people would always get hurt.
Well, and guns are great, but legally obtained guns are great.
Yes. And certain members, they weren't legally theirs.
When they were hack banging.
They used their type of force to go after people for street control, area control, trade control, turf, because you had to know. And as an officer of that particular region of the metropolitan, you had to know what you were dealing with. And I was intrigued by that. I wanted to get more educated and on how to keep up with that. And I'm not going to lie to you. The day a group of us transferred to another area, this particular specialized unit that goes after groups of people that do crimes,
the hang members,
they specifically looked at me and said, who's going to keep this place at bay, man? Like, who's going to keep this under control? And I was proud of that statement, because I felt like at that moment, it was like I was Wyatt Earp of that area. It was like
chasing the Cowboys.
I mean, we were just going after. And I've come across a lot of different investigators in my career that I could tell I would work well with them, because they were, and you had to be smart about it, okay? Because to me, knowledge is power. All right. And that's something in any profession. I don't care what you do, just know your job and do it well, and you'll like it, and you'll get something out of it. You should go to work. You can't get in a stagnant environment to where you're miserable when you go to work. Okay. Like today, I had a rough day today, and I was frustrated about some things, but actually it turned out to be a good thing. I helped some people out, and I felt like it made a difference. But does it matter? No, it doesn't. My stress level went up for a little bit, and this bad guy really got to me, kinda. But it's just all the amount of paperwork and the confusion of how to do something was part of the process. And that's where officers get frustrated, is the amount of paperwork that we do. It's 5 minutes of fun and 2-3 hours of paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay. On the back end. That's just how it is. That's the nature of the beast. So when I tell these stories, there's a lot of paperwork that goes into that. Like catching that burglar, that was an all-night deal. I didn't get out of jail for a long time. I had to do a lot of intense paperwork, an in-depth report, for court and things, because, there's these folks out there that want, again, though, it's not political. This isn't a political forum. I feel like that everybody has a fair chance in court, and they should get their day in court. That's just the judicial system we have. It's not the best, but it's what we got, and we have to go. We have to go with it. And I'm not above the law, and I don't feel like any officer that I work with is, and nor do I aspire to be. I go out there, and sometimes you'll hear, whenever I get recruits in the car, and they're like, well, my last FTO said, we're not, the DL never file. I'm like, well, here's the thing. You're not a district attorney, and I'm not a district attorney. You're not a judge. I'm not a judge. You're not a jury. So it doesn't matter. We're going to do our job, and we're going to do it right. And if there's a crime and this victim needs help, we're going to help them, because that's what we signed up for. And that's what you have to do, and all this stuff. And that's where the cat and mouse kind of came into it. And I never really looked into, as far as, I don't know. It was just, some people get a rush out of certain things. Like, some people like to go skydiving.
Yeah. Or that adrenaline.
Yeah. If they budget up, to me, police work was that. Every day it was just fun, to me.
Yeah.
And then I aspired to go to other units to where it was just as fun, and it was exciting. And when you came into work, you were just pumped, and you just never know what was going to happen. It was a lot of fun. So, hey, it's a good time for a break. What do you think?
I think so.
All right. We'll see you back here on this Salty Sarge.
And we are back here at the Salty Sarge Lounge. Some fresh drinks, and still raining outside. We still got a little bit of damp weather.
It's like a good October evening.
Yes, it is.
And it's not October yet, but it's this actually feels good because yesterday it was like 1,000 degrees and I was miserable.
Yes, yeah.
And then today you're just like, oh, wow, it's so comfortable. I can breathe again.
We're talking about the weather.
Yes.
It's like old man, like trope number 1 right there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did want to ask you, because we were talking about these hang members and the hang member units. How many different units have you been a part of in your 17 years?
I've been a part of 3.
3?
Yeah, 3 specialized, where I was in a unit to where we dealt with street level narcotics, and then another unit that dealt with hang members. And then, of course, I was an SRO. So, and I dealt with juvenile hang members and kid problems, which that's a whole nother series.
We can make a whole spin-off on that.
That's actually pretty good because there was a lot that went on in schools that people don't know, and it's going to be quite funny that really happened there.
Perfect.
But anyway, so we were talking about foot chases. Last one here, last little story. So one night my spouse is riding with me, and every time my spouse rode with me, something always happened.
Yeah.
And the guys I worked with, you would think by that time they would come and kind of follow me because I was going to go get into something. One, I can't stand to be bored. Okay. At that time, I couldn't just sit there for a while. If I was exhausted from working all these other side hustles I did, security gigs and stuff, I mean, I would come into work and I'd be tired, but then sometimes I get a burst of energy and I'm like, you know what? It's been cold. It's warm. I want to go fight. So I want to go find some bad guys. So we talked about these little houses in past episodes that would turn on their light and sell, these illegal things that people would
smoke, the porch lights on.
Hell yeah.
Doors open.
We'll just call them a crack house, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I would go to my areas and look at these certain crack houses. Well, this particular one was opened up by a particular group of guys that were another group of a little organized crime, another hang member, and they hung out on a street called Walnut. So that was kind of their name. They called themselves the Walnuts.
The Walnuts.
Anyway, yeah. So, and you throw like another word on there, but we can't be specific. I feel like we can, but
yeah,
it's like, it rhymes with sip. We're calling the Walnut Sips. So anyway, there were a notorious little group of folks that were dealing illegal drugs that you would not get at a pharmacy. And this is before Narcan, and this is before stuff that would like totally kill you like right now. Like this stuff would never touch you like that. It was weird because it wouldn't. It just got you addicted to it to where you spent your entire life chasing that high, because that's exactly what a person told me, because I was curious. I was like, why on earth would you be doing this? And they're like, well, you got to understand it's the best high ever, and you're always going to go back to that high. Mm-hmm. So the member would tell me, the dealer said, yeah, all I have to do is I give you the first ones free on me because I got you for life. Mm-hmm. And that is very true. So, and I saw it would demise people's lives for years. I mean, for years. So there's a particular house that was open up for business, and I was excited because I was like, oh man, because what you do is when you drive by and you see cars there, and then you see people in the cars just sitting there, random people, and they got the deer in the headlight look, and you're like, oh, we're open for business. And I would go,
we found one.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. So I'm cruising along. It's late, and I drove through there, and I couldn't get any movement really, and I'm kind of by myself, so it's kind of hard to do it by yourself because you're watching a car leave and you have to go find it. Mm-hmm. But if you have partners in the area, you could message them or radio them or call them on the cell phone and say, hey, and this is before smartphones too. So I'm dating myself. We didn't really use that technology. We had these little radios that no one really cared about, like a CB.
Yeah.
And we'd tell each other, hey, they're going this way. And they would try to get some traffic stop on it, right? Because you don't just stop a car for no reason. Okay, that's illegal. We don't do that. Nuggets of knowledge there. So, or at least I didn't do that. Everything I did was by the book and legal, 1,000%. And I can prove that in court and everything else. So this night I drive by and there's a pickup truck, and it was a old Chevy white pickup. And it wasn't a 4-door. I hadn't really come out with those yet. They were coming, but they weren't there yet. Mm-hmm. And you remember how you had to crawl in the back seat and you had to open the door. You had to open the front door to open the back door, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You had to open the city cap. So this guy's hiding back there. And I just happened to drive by not real slow, but because if you drive too slow, they're gonna run or ditch whatever they have.
Yeah.
So I kind of like speed by, and as I look by, I told Brad, Brad, there's someone in the back of that truck. And she's like, no. I go, yeah, there is. He just ducked down. So I stop. Well, about that time, the doors fling open, and out he goes. And it's a little white guy. And I was like, ooh, even better. Like, we know there's drugs in here. So he runs across the street, and he's like running for his life, and I'm chasing him. And I just got this new little radio harness that we could connect. It had an earpiece. The microphone was kind of on the front of your chest.
Yeah.
So you're not running with the radio, right?
Yeah, you're not having
it's in your pouch, right? And you're just you're talking to it, and it's awesome. And I can hear, it's got a little thing, and it's more stealthier. So I'm running, and he darts in this backyard, and there's like a big old group of cedar trees, and he's thinking, I'm going to run into the cedar trees. Well, he kind of turns around and stops, and then he kind of goes down to the ground. I don't have to use any kind of force or anything. He just kind of goes down. Well, as I get him down, I handcuff him, and he's like, and this is like a pretty good response, an accurate response of, sir, you are fast and you scared me. And I was like, I thought, I look behind me and there's a freight train coming at me, and it's like, I don't want to die. And I don't have my gun out. I don't ever usually have my gun out. I didn't need my gun out. I was like, this is cool, whatever. Yeah. So I take him down, and I grab him, and then I
so he just straight up admitted defeat. He turned back.
Went down. Like, he's like, he goes, I can't get anywhere from this. I'm not going to do anything. So I was like, okay, cool. So he goes down, and I order him down. He goes to his knees. Well, as I get up there to handcuff him, I smell like a foul smell. I'm like, dude, did you like step in like dog crap? What's up, man? I stinks. And he goes, I look down at his, I got my flashlight under my arm, because a night shifter, your flashlight's like your best friend. Mm-hmm. Your gun, your flashlight. Actually, probably your flashlight, your gun. And you stick it under your arm, and you learn to maintain it and use it to your advantage by having your hands free.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like using it, and I screen down to his leg, and on his shoe, I see like poop. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, is it dog? Yeah. He goes, no, sir. He goes, you literally scared the crap out of me. I started laughing. I was like, oh, wow, this is a first. Like, okay. And so I'm laughing. He goes, sir, please don't laugh. I got overexcited, and you really did scare me. And I was like, awesome. So I bring him back to the car, and he stunk to high heavens. Okay. It was so nasty. And the spouse set the car. Yeah. And I get her back to the car, and she's like, what happened? And my partners are there. And I said, hey, you're going to have to ride with somebody else. And she goes, why? And I said, hey, go tell us what happened. He goes, I pooped my pants. And I starts laughing. And I go, tell us what happened again. He goes, he scared the poop out of me. And I was like, see? And everybody's laughing, and the guy's laughing too, okay? And I said, dude, you made my night. I go, I appreciate you. And oftentimes, I would think the so-called, they're disclaimer, they're innocent till proven guilty, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, in this case, and the guy, aka suspect, I'm always intrigued by their stories and how they end up doing their lives. I ask a lot of questions, personal questions, if you will. Mm-hmm. So, I was intrigued by his statement, and it was funny. He laughed about it too. So I wasn't violating I was not dehumanizing him in any manner. It was a humorous moment, and it was funny. That's my disclaimer. Yeah. So we know that I'm not violating any kind of policies or human rights, okay? Mm-hmm. He ran from the police. He was detained for drugs that he ditched. He ditched several bags of off-white powdery substances that was believed to be crack. So, and some powdery substance called cocaine. So anyway, so we get him back to the car, and I tell the partner, I say, hey, and whenever you got him in the back seat, the old cars didn't have any kind of like ventilation system, really. Mm-hmm. Now they have their temperature controlled and stuff, but before they were not. Yeah. So it was always hot in there. You're talking, it's like an oven sometimes. Oh, no. So could you imagine?
Yeah, that's sitting there baking.
And it was summertime. It was warm. It was like fall. So I had my heater on. No, it was wintertime because I had my jacket on. So it was wintertime. So it was warm. Mm-hmm. And, so it was just stewing in there. It was awful, man. I had my head out the window the whole time going out in jail. But I told my spouse, I said, hey, you're going to need to ride with somebody else because, it's disgusting. And she, when she first started riding with me, she was intrigued by the jail, and going in there and checking everything out. And then it got to a point to where she would I'm just going to sit in the car. And she didn't care about doing the fun stuff, to a point. But there's some other funny stories that she did, that she said things when I had my camera rolling, and I'm just like, really?
Gonna get you in trouble?
Yeah, I'm not used to that, and nothing came out of it, but it was pretty funny how she said some things. And she's a civilian. I mean, she can speak her mind. I mean, I can't. I'm the only one controlled here to a point, which I get in trouble routinely for saying things, but it's hard for me not to, because I'm a real person too, and I'm
not a robot.
Dropping, like, mother effers to me. I feel like I would oftentimes stop the person and say, hey, because we would get in trouble for, when the body cameras came out, we get in trouble for using profanity. And I would say, hey, and they would drop a F-bomb or something. I go, hello. Like, in middle of their conversation, I'm like, does profanity offend you? No. So would it be okay if I use profanity back? Absolutely, sir. Yes. Permission granted. So my thing was, because our policies would say, if the other person's offended, see, caveat.
There you go.
And of course the supervisor's like, haha, whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm just saying, I mean, if it comes down to it and we try to get something.
If you try to take me to court on this, yes, you're going to lose.
So in the matter of speaking to the union things. Okay. Yeah. But because sometimes that kind of stuff comes out, it could be de-escalation. And I never knew what that word was until recently. Okay. We never used that word. We always did it. We try to talk people off the ledge and talk them down from us having to use force. Because the thing you have to remember, dude, the uniform, I have to pay for that. Okay. And when I was younger, you would get your uniform tore up. You would rip your pants, your boots. And then it was just, your supervisor would be all over you. Like, dude, please stop. Like, hey, I can't help it. This guy did this. He made me act. Sorry. So then you start learning, you know what? I'm just going to talk to people. I'm like, hey, dude, you're not going to run from me. Okay. Yeah. Or if you do, like now, people don't run because I yell at them, no, don't run from me. Just make it worse. And they come over to me. Rookies are amazed by that. Because one guy the other day was like, hey, he just came running up to you. I was like, I told him to come here and he listened. I said, I have a deeper voice than you do. Your parts haven't all dropped yet. I'm sure
you're going to, all I got to do is say, hey, you're going to regret this. And they'll
and by the way, if they keep going, I'm just going to be like, oh, I'm 10-8 and I leave. No crime here. But anyway, that was some good moments on some foot chases. There's many more just through that I recall that come up down the road. But those are some significant ones that I do remember that were really funny and memorable to me. And mind you too, earlier you said, why are we doing this too? And I just want to add a little caveat to that just popped in my head. My sister one time, when I graduated the academy, she gave me a diary and a journal. And my dad was like, I really wish I'd have wrote down some of the stories that I encountered as a police officer. And I remember those stories very detailed. And we're going to have him on the cast because I want to hear his side, because you're going to see different generations. You're going to hear different generations talking about how it was and how it is now.
Yeah.
And, I never put one story in that book. And because at the moment, you're like, I'll do it later.
Yeah.
And then
later never comes.
Years go by and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been doing this for 17 and a half years, almost 18. And you're just like, wow, like this is nuts. And I don't regret it. But when you said, hey, we should do this, that's kind of my way of putting these stories down, for someday down the road for my kids to listen to if they needed to. If I'm not here, if something happens to me, at least it's there and it's kind of in place to where other people can go, hey, how was Salty Sarge like? Who is he like? Well, I got some stories you can listen to. You can see how he is, how he was. So, and these are not exaggerations. These are real stories that have really happened, and they were within the scope of the law and within the scope of my job.
Yeah.
And they fell in line with everything that I was trained to do. And, I was never rogue or anything like that. So, I mean, I was actually a pretty smart officer. I am a pretty smart officer. I don't, if there's people out there that don't like me that are other officers, I mean, sorry about you, there's some officers I don't like, but, and I also express to people too, civilians, that there's bad teachers, there's bad doctors, there's bad nurses, there's bad radio announcers. I mean, there's bad athletes. I mean,
sometimes there are bad officers.
Yes. And sometimes there is, and they lack
that's unavoidable. Because you don't know until you know.
Exactly. You can go in there and be a yes man and play the game, and anybody can pass a test, right? And answer questions the way they need to, and they make it through that process, and then they get out on the street And then we realized, okay, this guy was an idiot. He should have never been hired, or gal.
They fired on a car because of an acorn. Yeah. Hypothetically, not that didn't happen. Wink, wink. Yeah, and to speak more on that, talking about your stories and that stuff, it is. I think it's nice and something that maybe you don't realize, but this is that bonus to be able to share these stories. And because I know Salty Sarge, the officer. I also know Salty Sarge, the man. We've been friends for a while now, and we hung out, and we did talk about your work sometimes, but there's so much more to you. And I don't think I talk to a lot of people. I got a lot of friends from different ways of life than I was raised. And some of them kind of have that understanding, like these cops are humans. Some of them are just like, oh, filthy pigs, yada, yada, yada. And I want everybody to be able to understand that, hey, these guys aren't like the root of all evil. They're just guys that show up. You could be one too if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hiring.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
They're kind of desperate at this point.
Yeah.
But they're not just Hitlers or anything like that. They're just guys that come in and try to do the job. Some can be bad, not a lot. I promise you a majority are good guys that are just trying to do their job and take care of their families.
That's right. And it is a job. And I had to really accept that and understand that down the road with my spouse, because it was a struggle, and nobody really understood. I never saw it with my father. My father was really good about keeping things at bay and showing me the fun side of it and the innocent side of it. And then once I was out there doing it, it was like, wow, there's a lot more to this than what I thought. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't prepared. Yeah, I know I was. I just felt like it was more or less, it was a cat and mouse.
It was a culture shock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a huge culture shock.
Yeah.
Real quick on that. And just how my department puts us in areas where we probably didn't need to be there, but
where you don't have that understanding. Yeah.
I will say, I learned to be a really good police officer on talking to people and being just nice to people and just getting what I wanted out of it. I mean, I always taught my rookies, like, we jump out on people, man. I could talk my way in their pants, meaning to search them, to find drugs. Okay. Not in their pants, but in their pockets.
Oh, come on, man. We know what you're talking about.
You're going to jump out on people who are like on a bike, I mean, you see a grown man riding a bicycle. I mean, that's not like a regular, like, specialized bicycle.
Yeah. He's not wearing head-to-toe spandex.
Yeah, he's riding a Huffy, in blue jeans, right in the middle of the night. I mean, he probably obviously doesn't have a driver's license, or, he doesn't want to get arrested in a car, but we have a lot of ordinances where you have to have certain things for your bike. And it was always a good way to get in contact with somebody that you discover things, like warrants, drugs, things like that. I found drugs and bike handles. Yeah. The bike handle, dude, like up inside.
Really? Oh, like you pulled the rubber off.
Pulled the thing on and drugs came out. I was like, wow, how would you look there? I was like, I don't know. That same supervisor was like, dude, that's amazing. Like, I would have never known to do that. So, which we have some more stories on that down the road too. So
yes. And also, for those who don't know, these are all pre-recorded, but they are timed out to a specific time. So if I have calculated correctly, this episode will be released on October 23rd, meaning next week we will release on October 30th, the day before Halloween. And next week we will have a Halloween special.
Some ghost stories that involve cops. Oh.
Ghost cops.
Yeah.
I don't.
And how Salty Sarge was scared and too scared to go do something.
I can't wait for that. That would be great. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Salty Sarge Podcast. Check it out on Facebook and anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. We'll see you in the next one.
See you next time. Stay salty.